Well, hello, and welcome to the first edition of A View from the Great North Wood with me, the Old Grey Owl. This is the first edition of this new series that will be shown on the YouTube channel. And just to let you know what you're in for, basically this YouTube channel is a version of my blog and my Twitter feed, and that is it's a sort of a left-wing take on culture, specifically films, literature, plays, etc., education policy, and politics. Other stuff might be thrown in now and again. I'm also sort of planning to produce some videos that might be of some use or some interest to English teachers, but that's for the future. What I want to do in this first edition of The View from the Great North Wood is to talk about books, and specifically I've chosen 4 books for summer reading, 4 of the best books I've read this year and which I think you would probably enjoy. I'll make no apologies for the fact that the first one I'm going to talk about is my book, Zero Tolerance, and that is my first published novel. It's a satire on the current state of education policy in England. It's a comedy, and it tells a story basically of Kareem, 15-year-old Syrian refugee who escapes from the horrors of the jungle in Calais and arrives in the fictional South London borough of Longdon. He's fostered and is taken to the local secondary school, and all goes well until the school is taken over by a multi-academy trust. The other side of the story focuses on Rick Westfield, the deputy head of Fairfield High School, the school that Kareem goes to, and his moral dilemmas and struggles in the wake of the trust's takeover. It's a satire, as I say. It's funny, and it's pretty polemical. It takes a particular view. It's highly critical of multi-academy trusts and the academy programme in general. It's very critical of current fashions in educational management and leadership, things such as zero tolerance behaviour policies, silent transition in corridors, students being banged up in exclusion booths for long periods of time without proper supervision, things that are increasingly common in our education system and things which are largely unknown and uncommented on by the general public. It's particularly aimed at teachers, this, and some teachers are in favour of those things, will think I'm going completely over the top, and others will be nodding their heads sagely and thinking, yep, this book's right on the money. I say it's had some great reviews. I'm very pleased with the reception it's had, and I think it's worth a few moments of your time to have a look at it. It's a bit of a page turner once you get stuck into it, and the characters I think are sympathetic and interesting. And not to give too much away, it's got a nice, happy, hopeful ending, fantasy ending, some might say, for old lefties. But it's certainly worth you having a look. It would be great if you decided to buy it, because I really would like to cover my costs as a first-time author. I've got no expectations or ambitions in terms of making a fortune. I don't think I'm going to be the Jeffrey Archer of the educational world, although one of the reviews did describe me as the edgy Dickens we've all been waiting for, That was Mark Anston in Schools Week, and he is definitely a man who knows what he's talking about. So, give it a try if you like it. Pass on the details to your friends and support a struggling artist. The details will be up on the screen a bit later on. So that's my book. And that brings me on neatly to my next book I'm going to talk about, which is Hilary Mantell, The Mirror and the Light. This obviously is the book that is of the moment, just been listed for the Booker, and that would be a hat trick of wins. Would have been a bit rude not to shortlist it, really, in the way that Hilary Mantell has kind of turned into the Judi Dench of the literary establishment, a national treasure. And I don't want to sort of demean her. It is a fantastic book. Let's make that clear right from the beginning. Um, if you liked Wolf Hall and you like Bringing Up Bodies, you will like this. I love both of those books. I must confess I preferred Bring Up the Bodies to Wolf Hall, but they're both fantastic. This, I have to say, was a bit more difficult to get into. First 100 pages were a bit tricky. The problem is that Mantell takes no prisoners in terms of her expectations on the reader. It's been a long time since the second part of the trilogy was published, and there are hundreds of characters introduced, all of whom appear to have three different names. And Mantell expects you to know who they are. The most useful and most well-thumbed pages of the book are the first few pages where she lays out the characters and their names and their titles and their relationships to each other in terms of which faction they're in. That is tremendously useful. But after that, even a raging cynic such as myself was suckered into it, and I did love it in the end. I mean, Mantell is a great writer, writing at the height of her powers, and she manages to evoke this Tudor world of skullduggery and political intrigue and ruthlessness brilliantly well. And the ending, even though we all know that he's going to die, I hope you knew that, because now you do, and we know how he's going to die, there is still a steadily ratcheting sense of epic tragedy as the book hurtles towards its conclusion. It is, though, all three of them put together, 1900 pages. That's a lot of pages. That's a lot of pages for Thomas Cromwell and Henry VIII. And frankly, this book could easily have been 200 or 300 pages shorter, and nothing would have been lost. She piles on detail after detail after detail, partly, to show off her research, I suppose, and also because a lot of the conversations in there appear to be in there simply because they can be brought up at the end as evidence for the prosecution for things that Cromwell has said loosely or out of turn in his overconfidence. And the main shtick of the trilogy is this idea that Mantell wants to rescue Thomas Cromwell and restore his reputation so that history does not see him as some kind of ruthless Machiavellian thug, but as a working class arrivist who finds incredible power and influence and success at the highest levels of the British court, and through the force of his personality and education. And she does a great job in doing that, but she'd already done that in books 1 and 2, and there is a sense of her going over old ground. The other bit that I found terribly annoying about it was Mantell's use of the present tense. Every would-be author knows that literary agents, publishing houses, advice sellers in boutique agencies will tell you the first person and the present tense, that's a winner. It gives you immediacy. Well, only if you are absolutely a master of what you're doing. Mantell is a master, and even in her hands, it sometimes is a bit stale and a bit obvious. She also persists in this idea of not identifying Cromwell and not identifying the characters and just simply referring to him as he, even when old Henry VIII is on the scene. She ties herself up in knots sometimes where she has to make clear who is somebody after she's started. It's a little bit annoying. But that's a kind of a minor caveat. It is still a wonderful piece of work, and you could do a lot worse after you've read Zero Tolerance, obviously, than to spend your hard-earned money on Hilary Mantell's final part of the trilogy, The Mirror and the Light. So, give it a go, see what you think. You don't read it if you haven't read the first two, try those first. If you haven't read the first two, you're in for a treat. Quite a long treat, I have to say, of 1900 pages, but it is a major and significant cultural monolith, if you like. Try it and see what you think. Okay, that brings me on to my third book, which is Hamnet by, I'll get it in screen, yeah, Maggie O'Farrell. Oh, goodness me, I've read some great books this year. Hamnet is an absolute masterpiece. Bit of a spoiler alert coming up, but it's about the marriage of Shakespeare and Anne Hathaway. And as the title suggests, it's about their son, Hamnet, and their response to his death as a little boy, 9 or 10, I think he was. It's beautifully written. Her prose style is just glorious. And it's what she does beautifully is to imagine Shakespeare's life. You know, we know very few rock-solid biographical details of Shakespeare and Anne Hathaway, hardly anything at all. And she fills in the gaps with great imagination, whereby she has Shakespeare's father as a violent, domineering, patriarchal bully who rules the household with a rod of iron. Shakespeare's scared stiff of him as a sort of effete, wordy dreamer. And Anne Hathaway, as she's cast as some kind of quasi-mystical witch woman from the woods outside of Stratford, who is kind of shunned and pitied and feared by the local population. They come together in marriage and have children and are tremendously happy. When Hamlet dies, it turns into a beautiful study of grief. It's impossible to read the ending of this book without tears rolling down your cheeks. The spoiler is that at the end, she travels to London for the first time to see her husband in his natural milieu and slips into the Globe to see a performance of Hamlet. And that is just a brilliant and beautiful episode. I am absolutely amazed and staggered that this has not been listed for the Booker. There are some things on that list that are not fit to wipe this one's bootstraps. This is a really beautiful book. If you only read one, read this one. Okay? And that leads me to my fourth and final book, which is Evie Wylde, The Base Rock. It's a third book, I think. This was a real treat. New to me, read the reviews and thought I'd give it a punt. Lovely sort of English Gothic horror-y sort of vibe, ghosty vibe. 3 separate periods of history, all interlinked in the same place, sort of in the borders between Edinburgh in the north of England. It's basically about the abuse of women, verbal, emotional, and physical. That sounds jolly, doesn't it? It's actually incredibly subtle and powerful and beautifully done. Um, and the links between the different eras of history are carefully woven. There's one that's sort of pre-medieval in the distant mist of time, another in the same house or same area around about the Second World War, and then one that's contemporary. And the problems are different and related to the specific time periods, but they're also universal. It is a fantastic read. She's a great stylist, Evie Wylde, and I think we are going to be hearing a lot more from her. Okay, so they are my 4 top books for the summer. There'll be details on the end of this broadcast, so try them out. And next time, I'm going to be having a look at a couple of poems that you might like to use in the classroom if you're an English teacher, or you just might really like to listen to if you can't be bothered to read the blog. Okay, see you next time. Bye.